Okay, everyone. Um, I'll grab the mic back for just a minute to set up this next panel, which is all about song parodies. And so we have a total of 5 speakers to address this topic. And we will go in alphabetical order by last name. So that's Kevin Ahern, John Bell, Kevin Furland, Dargan Frierson, and Rick Heineman. So we will kick things off first with Dr. Ahern of Oregon State University, a biochemistry professor, um, who um, who wants you to know that he is a goofball. So take it away, Kevin.
Okay, thank you very much. What I want to talk about is a little bit about a class I teach at Oregon State in the Honors College called Sing a Song of Science, and that's what's on the screen here. I tell my students that music is about as natural of a thing as we have. I think of mom, music, and memory, and they all go together. Music is part of our earliest experiences. Melodies we soothe, we sing to babies to put them to sleep. And we learn some of the first things that we learn through melodies. The alphabet song, of course, we all know. To get my students in the class that I teach, to get them to learn how to write these melodies and these parodies, I like to make the link between language and melody. And so the simplest way to do this is with the limerick. The limerick, of course, everybody knows. It has a fixed cadence. It has a set rhyme scheme. The first 2 lines rhyme. The next 2 lines, third and fourth lines rhyme, and then the 5th line sort of sums it up with a rhyme that goes back to the first 2. Limericks are nice because I think that they provide a link between words and rhythm and teach students that sort of relationship between the 2. I picked a couple of limericks that I've written that I use as examples to students to talk about. So I confess that I truly can't see solving problems mathematically. So don't ask me then how to double 2n because it all seems so foreign to me. So the idea here is, of course, that this has a cadence that goes with it. And in each line, I've marked the number of syllables that's there. So limericks are a little flexible in terms of how many syllables they have per line. The first, second, and fifth lines typically have between 8 and 10, and the third and fourth typically have 5 to 7. It varies a little bit as the flow of the words goes. I'm sure everybody here is aware. But it's important that the student learn that the cadence is what drives the actual creation of the limerick. Another one here, chemist was studying C of fire hydrants chemistry. Inside it, there was H2O. On the outside, she found K9P. And you can see that, again, the number of syllables here varies a bit from what was before, but the overall flow of the limerick was exactly the same as the previous one. Now, I'm a very big believer in flow, and I'm a very big believer in fitting in the space that one is given. So in song parodies and all the song parodies I write, I use the melody as the strict boundary, the strict barrier for students to work within. The challenges of writing science song parodies, of course, is that science is a discipline that has a lot of technical information. That's also one of the reasons, actually, for writing the song parody. The information on the right is from, I'm a biochemist, so it's a processes of glycolysis and gluconeogenesis, and I'll later show you something about gluconeogenesis. But there's a lot of technical information that's there. It's important that whatever that I write be technically accurate. It's important, of course, in a song that it rhyme, because that's what brings everything together. The song, the lyrics that the student writes must match the cadence very carefully of the song. And I'm a very big stickler, not a stickler, but a stickler for matching that cadence. And it's also important to understand what depth that you can go at. So you can go very deep into a principle, you can go more shallowly into a principle, and it really depends, of course, on what the aim is in the teaching. I recommend to students especially that they start with simple tunes. Probably the song tune that is more copied than any other for writing song parodies is the Battle Hymn of the Republic. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. It's a melody that everybody knows. It's very easy to write to. The Beatles' Let It Be, another great one there, and America the Beautiful. So those are three very common ones that I recommend students start on because they have a very simple progression, a very simple melody, and it's very easy to match words to those melodies. An example of one such melody that I wrote to the tune of America the Beautiful is the Ribosome Song. Can you hear this?
Too beautiful with RNA that makes the peptide bonds. You hold tRNA so it can pair up with codons. The ribosome translate mRNA. Initiate and translocate from start to
Okay, so a nice example of a simple melody and a simple set of lyrics that match that. One of the things I try to get the students to do is understand a sort of a set of rules by which they can write their melodies. And one of the reasons I started teaching the class was that I myself sat down and made myself learn the rules that I had sort of instinctively been doing for years. Those rules, I think, help the student to make a more powerful and more meaningful song limerick, or song melody, rather. The word rhythms must match the verse and song rhythms. And I think one of the problems that students and beginners particularly have is that they have an idea for what they want to do, and they have a line that they're really fond of, but they take that melody or they take that song and really stretch it too much. And I'll give you some examples of that in just a bit. As I've noted, I'm a very big stickler for counting syllables and making sure they match carefully. So one of the things I do when I'm writing songs is I'll have a melody and I'll have a set of lyrics that go with, or try to go with it, and something doesn't match. And so I will always, the first thing I'll do is just count the syllables in each stanza of the original song, and then count the number of syllables that I've got, and then see where the mismatch is occurring. Is it in number? Is it in cadence? And so forth with the melody that I'm writing. One of the biggest things I tell students is not to get stuck on words and phrases that break the rhythm. So breaking the rhythm of a song really is problematic, and it's one of the reasons that I think it's actually fairly difficult to write good rap lyrics. Rap tends to, by its very nature, violate the sort of cadence that one would associate with a song. And so it's fairly difficult to do that and write a song lyric that sticks. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. And the other thing I recommend students do is start with easy rhyme schemes. So starting with easy rhyme schemes, of course, is important for that overall success. Now, matching cadence is a really good example. This is actually the way I wrote a couple of my songs. I had an idea for a song, and I thought, boy, it'd be really cool to write something to the tune of Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious from Mary Poppins. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. That had a nice rhythm to it. And thinking about something that I was talking to my students about at the time, I was talking about glucose, glycolysis, and gluconeogenesis. And so the first supercalifragilisticexpialidocious has 14 syllables. If I take another phrase I'd like students to learn, glucose molecules are made by using 2 pyruvates. It also has 14 syllables, but just based on the way I've said it, you can hear that there's not really a melodic nature to that. It didn't match clearly. On the other hand, if I take the phrase gluconeogenesis is so exasperating, it also has 14 syllables, and it doesn't take much to see how it might fit into supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Gluconeogenesis is so exasperating. Another similar lyric to it, actually became another song that I wrote, was superoxide dismutase is supercatalytic. And you start to see, of course, the students start to see, I'm sure you all know this, but the students start to see how flow of the words fits into the flow of the original song. An example of a lyric that I wrote about gluconeogenesis using this melody is here. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I will play a part of it.
When cells have lots of ATP and NADH2, they strive to store this energy as sugar, yes they do. Inside of mitochondria, they start with pyruvate, carboxylating it to make oxaloacetate. Oh, gluconeogenesis is so exhilarating. Memorizing it can really be exasperating. Liver cells require it, there's no need for debating. Gluconeogenesis is so exhilarating.
Okay, so one of the things that I think is really important that I teach students is something that I call cheating in melodies. So cheating in melodies is something that happens all the time. Songwriters do it all the time, but we're not really aware of what's happening with that. The examples I give are that of John Lennon and Paul McCartney, who wrote, of course, many classic songs for the Beatles. And the way that they wrote their songs was fundamentally different. John cheats and Paul plays by the rules. And let me show you what I mean by that. Paul uses one syllable per note. When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. John, however, stretches syllables across multiple notes. John is more interested in the lyric than he is in matching the lyric to the melody. I want to hold your hand, right? Hand has to stretch over a long period because he's got a melody to which that goes. Cheater melodies are very hard to write to. Now, here's an example of a Paul song that I wrote.
Building of proteins, you ought to know. Needs amino acids. That type on catalysis in ribosome. Triplet bases, three-letter code.
Okay, by contrast, the John song has cadence issues. It also has stretches. Here's a song I wrote called Around the Nucleus.
DNA gets spooled like balls of yarn within the chromosomes, unwinding when it's duplicated there around the nucleus.
Now, the two songs, the second one was a heck of a lot harder to write than the first one. The second one took me a couple of months. The first song took me an evening to write. So when I get my students thinking about this, I say go for the non-cheater songs and try to match one syllable per a note. So in summary, what I teach my students is that language is melodic, that melodies reinforce lyrics when they match well, that syllables matter. Counting syllables and matching those syllables to the cadence is very important. And I recommend that they start simple by starting with Paul songs instead of starting with John songs. And the last thing I'll do here is put in a plug for my own Metabolic Melodies, which are shown right here. There's over 100 songs that you can download. I give them all away for free. So that said, I will stop and take any questions you might have.